Ever notice those pesky sinkholes in your candles? Don't worry, they're more common than you think, and today I'm going to show you how to fix them. Welcome to Candle Business Pro. I'm Chad, and I'm here to help you master the art of candle making and solve common challenges like sinkholes. Make sure to subscribe for more tutorials and tips. In this video, I'll explain what causes sinkholes, why certain waxes are more prone to them, and how you can easily fix them in your candles. Let's dive in. Sinkholes are voids or depressions that form in the candle wax as it's cooling. They're usually hidden under the surface and can affect the burn quality of your candles. If they aren't corrected, they can cause the wick to put itself out because they don't have the wax or the oil to fuel the flame. Let's take a quick look at a couple of examples. We'll take a closer look at some examples later in the video. But for now, let's take a look at this one here where the sinkhole is actually formed and you can see it on the top. And then we have an example here that hopefully will come through, but this one has a sinkhole. If you look at it just right, it's just barely a dent in the wax. I'm not sure if that's coming through, but we'll take a look at it a little later. But sometimes you can't see them and sometimes they're obvious. So it's super important to always check your candles to see if there are any signs of sinkholes. A sinkhole might seem minor, but it can lead to inconsistent burning, and it can frustrate customers if the candle doesn't perform as expected. Sinkholes happen because wax contracts as it cools. If it cools unevenly or too quickly, it can leave a void where the wax didn't fully settle. It is important to have a temperature-stable environment to cool your candles. Keep them away from drafts, air conditioning, or any direct sunlight where it can dramatically change the temperature. Certain waxes, like soy wax, are more prone to sinkholes because of their natural properties. Paraffin and coconut waxes are less likely to have sinkholes because they're formulated to have a more stable cooling process. We use both soy wax and a coconut soy wax, and they are dramatically different when it comes to sinkholes. We only use our coconut soy wax in a few collections because of cost and availability. We find that the sinkholes, when they happen in the soy wax, are easy to fix, and it's worth us continuing that in most of our collections. There's a few reasons. It's available at multiple suppliers, the cost is usually pretty low, and our customers are always looking for soy wax candles. Some fragrance oils and additives can make sinkholes more likely. For example, we have found over the last few years that citrus and cinnamon or spice oils do tend to make sinkholes happen a little more often than, say, a vanilla or a heavier oil. As we all know, temperature is very important for the candle making process in general. I do believe that temperature is the leading cause for sinkholes, whether it's part of your process or the environment that they set in. Let's take a look at 4 practical tips that can help reduce sinkholes. Tip number 1, pour your wax at the correct temperature. Each wax has a recommended temperature for pouring. For example, with 464 soy wax, we have found the sweet spot to be between 135 to 145 degrees Fahrenheit. Pouring too hot can trap air and it's going to cause the candle to cool unevenly. But if you pour too cold, it's going to cause adhesion issues. That's why we have found between 135 and 145 degrees Fahrenheit for 464 soy wax has been the best. It's always important to make sure that you look at your manufacturer's recommendations on heating and pouring temperatures. Tip number 2, control your workspace temperature. Your workspace should have a consistent, moderate temperature. Drafty or cold rooms can cause the candles to cool too quickly, leading to sinkholes and adhesion issues. Tip number 3, pour slowly and evenly. Pouring too fast can introduce air pockets into the wax, creating voids as it cools. By slowing down and having a steady hand, you minimize the risk of voids forming as the wax cools. Tip number 4, avoid temperature changes. Make sure that your candle containers have come to room temperature and don't place freshly poured candles in a drafty or cool area. Let them cool naturally in a stable temperature environment. Even if you've taken all of the steps to try to reduce sinkholes, they do still happen. It is a natural part of candle making, and I promise there's a simple fix. We do need a few supplies to go through this process. So we do need to have a heat gun, and then we also need a little skewer, These are very handy. You can find these anywhere. Cooking skewers is what they are. Definitely go with metal one. And then we do have our wick setters here as well, because the wicks do tend to fall once they get heated. So we have these to kind of save some cleaning later. I'm going to show you two methods that we use to fix sinkholes. In the first, we're going to heat gun or glaze the candle. Sometimes that is enough to fill in the sinkhole and you're done. And then in method two, I'm going to show you how to skewer for those deeper or troublesome sinkholes. So let's take a closer look at these steps. All right, in method one, we are going to use the heat gun method. Use a heat gun to gently melt the top layer of the wax. This allows the wax to even out and fill the sinkhole naturally. In most cases, this will be enough to get the sinkhole to fill. You may need to go back additional times because bubbles will present themselves and you'll need to even the surface again. As you can see here, I'm going to go around the top of the candle to melt the layers evenly. I want to get between an eighth, maybe to a quarter. We do not want to melt too much. We just want to melt enough for it to kind of even itself out and fill in the holes. We also want to make sure that we hold the heat gun away from the candle a few inches for safety reasons. We don't want to overheat the wick or the glass jar. In method two, we're going to use the heat gun and skewer method. For larger sinkholes or sinkholes that continue to create bubbles, use a skewer to open up the sinkhole, allowing it to fill in completely. This creates pathways for the melted wax to fill in when you use the heat gun. As you can see here, I'm going to again melt a thin layer on the top. And you can see here that this one we have larger sinkholes that look like they're a little deeper. So I'm going to go ahead and skewer. And then I do want to make sure that I get one by the wick. You can see that there are some bubbles forming. So I want to go through where those bubbles were forming and make sure I also get the skewer down into that hole. And then I'm going to take the heat gun and melt the excess wax off of the skewer and again, heat the candle to let the wax melt back down into the holes. All right, I'm going to let these sit for a few minutes and let them rest so that the wax can kind of harden. And I'm going to reset the wick here because that one started to fall. I'm going to go ahead and do this one just in case. And then we'll come back in a few minutes and take a look and see if we need to heat gun again. All right, let's take a look at our candles here and see if they need a heat gun again. So as you can see, we have a sinkhole still showing here. And then in this one, we have some bubbles. So we'll take the heat gun and we will melt a thin layer again and see if that is enough to get rid of the bubbles and fill in that little sinkhole. As you can see, I just took the heat gun and did a thin layer again, got rid of the bubbles on the one, and then it filled in the sinkhole on the other. Now we'll wait and let these solidify again and see if we need to go over them again with the heat gun. It does look like we are going to have a couple of bubbles to hit. One trick that you can do as they are setting is go through and just kind of pop them. Sometimes that will help because it's just a little air bubble coming up and it's not actually a sinkhole anymore. Sometimes they'll continue to bubble. So we'll come back to that and evaluate it once it solidifies again. Okay, let's take a look here. It looks like we do still have some bubbles in this candle. And then there's still a slight one there that might be hard to see. But there is a slight bubble there. So we're going to go ahead and do another heat. Again, just heat gun, thin layer melted so that it can even out. Okay, so we've got another little heat. This one is an actual bubble. So I'm going to go ahead and just poke in there a little bit and kind of close these up. And then we'll take the heat gun and melt the wax off of the skewer. And you can kind of see there that that has again evened out. It looks like there's still a couple of bubbles, so I'm going to hit those again with the skewer and the heat gun. Just a quick hit there, and then we'll let those solidify again and see if that did the trick. All right, our candles have mostly solidified, and it looks like this one here is good to go. So we are done with that. I'm going to set that aside for finishing. And then it looks like this one here, we still have a bubble in here, if you can kind of see that there. And I'm going to go ahead and just give this a little hit with the heat gun and see if that will fill right in. All right, I think it's tricky to see on the camera, but there is a bubble inside. So I'm just going to go ahead and smash that bubble out and then do another quick heat to melt this again. And then that should take care of it. We'll let that solidify just to make sure, but it should be good to go. All right, as you can see, this has solidified now, and it does look like it is good to go. So we'll set this aside and we'll get that ready to finish up. Now that we've looked at the methods that we use, I hope you're able to use these when you do have sinkholes that are present. While sinkholes are common in candle making, leaving them unaddressed may lead to issues and leave customers unsatisfied. Sinkholes can impact the burn performance and the overall customer experience, so it is important to take the time to fix them. By following the steps that I've shared, pouring at the right temperature, controlling your workspace conditions, and taking the right steps to fix sinkholes, you'll be able to create candles that burn evenly and delight customers every time. We use the heat gun method on nearly every soy candle that we make. It's a simple and effective way to ensure a flawless surface and to avoid any hidden sinkholes below the surface. The key is building consistent habits and processes into your candle making workflow. When you take these extra steps, it shows in the quality of your finished product, and the customers will notice the difference. Do sinkholes drive you crazy? Let me know in the comments below what wax you're using and if these tips helped. I'd love to hear. Want to learn all of the secrets to making flawless candles? Check out our candle making course where we give you our top-selling recipes, step-by-step instructions, and so much more. Visit candlebusinesspro.com for more details. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more candle making tutorials and tips. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you were able to take away a few tips from this video that will help when sinkholes do happen. They are a common issue with candle making, but with the right approach, they're easy to manage. And as always, remember, you have the spark, so go create something brilliant. See you soon.